The saloon doors slammed open with a bang sharp enough to silence the piano and freeze every hand of whiskey midair. Harlan Beecham stumbled in, stinking of rot gut and desperation, dragging a girl by the wrist like she was a busted saddlebag. The girl wore a bonnet low over her brow, her mouth tight, hands balled into fists. Her dress was torn, dusty, and her eyes, what little could be seen beneath the brim, flashed with something more than fear. $10! Harlan shouted, the sway in his step wild but purposeful. $10 for this worthless creature. She's no wife, not anymore. She's yours if you'll have her. Laughter crackled through the haze of cigar smoke, but it was nervous, uncertain. No one quite knew if Harlan was joking, or if he'd shoot someone to prove he wasn't. A revolver glinted at his side. The girl didn't struggle. She didn't speak. She just stared straight ahead, like she'd swallowed all her screams. Jonas Rourke was sitting alone in the corner, nursing a shot of bourbon he hadn't yet touched. Dust coated his boots, his coat, and the stubble lining his jaw. He watched. The scene, not blinking, not moving, not caring, until the girl's hand flinched. It was small, almost imperceptible, but Jonas saw it, the faintest twitch, like she was deciding whether to bolt, scream, or swing a fist. That hesitation reminded him of his daughter, had reminded him once, before the fever took her, before he stopped seeing ghosts in other people's pain. Jonas stood up slowly, like someone rising to greet death, not save anyone. He walked across the saloon without speaking. The crowd parted. Harlan turned toward him, grinning through yellow teeth. "Well now," Harlan slurred. "You want her, mister? $10. Final offer." Jonas reached into his coat, pulled out a battered leather pouch, and dropped it on the bar with a thud. It held $10, and not a cent more. Harlan snatched it up like a starving dog and didn't wait for further conversation. He staggered out into the dust, whistling a broken tune drunk on silver and sin. The girl remained frozen, her chin lifted slowly. "You'll ride with me," Jonas said. It wasn't a question. She nodded once. They rode in silence out of Dead Elm before the sun hit high noon. The heat shimmered off the hardpan like oil on water, and the wind carried the smell of horses and gunpowder. The girl rode behind him on his spare mare, stiff as dried wood, her bonnet still hiding half her face. Her name, she said quietly, was Maybelle. That was all she offered. The trail to Jonas's ranch stretched 50 miles over broken country. Canyons split the land like open wounds, and vultures circled with hungry patience overhead. They stopped once for water, beneath a twisted mesquite tree. Maybelle kept glancing behind them, eyes scanning the trail like someone might follow. No one came. At sundown, the ranch came into view, a lonely spread of dry earth and rusting fence posts, flanked by brittle hills and a windmill that creaked, like an old prayer. The house was 2 rooms of timber and tin. Jonas dismounted, wordlessly handed her the reins. "You stay in the main house. There's only 1 bed. I'll sleep in the barn." She looked at him, unsure. "I didn't buy you for that," he said flatly. "I just didn't want to watch that bastard sell you like a mule." Maybelle nodded again. She didn't thank him. That night, the stars came out sharp and pitiless. Jonas lay on a bed of hay in the loft, listening to coyotes yip in the distance and the wind whine through the boards. He didn't sleep much, not anymore. The land kept a man busy, and grief kept him awake. The girl was quiet in the house. No sobbing, no pacing, like a ghost slipped into the walls. Over the next few days, Maybelle moved with a kind of deliberate silence that unsettled him. She rose early, cleaned the hearth, mended the busted window without being asked. She chopped wood, badly but with effort, and helped feed the livestock. She didn't ask about the ranch. She didn't ask about Jonas. And she sure as hell didn't say much about herself. But Jonas noticed things. Her hands were rough, not the kind of calluses a woman got from domestic chores, but the kind earned from hard riding, maybe even rope, burns. She walked with a slight limp, favouring her left leg. and once he saw the hem of her dress lift in the wind and caught sight of what looked like a knife strapped to her calf. She never mentioned it, and Jonas didn't ask. One afternoon, while she was mending a saddle strap, a storm rolled in fast and mean. Thunder cracked like rifle fire. Maybelle flinched, ducked like a soldier under cannon fire. Her eyes darted to the door. "You expecting someone?" Jonas asked, pausing with a branding iron in hand. She shook her head too quickly. "Just don't like thunder." Jonas stared at her. The wind slammed the shutters. She looked back, meeting his eyes for the first time. Green, sharp, haunted. He said nothing. That night, something woke him. A whisper. Not English. A low, flowing language that scraped the edge of memory. He crept to the loft's opening and looked out. She was outside, moving slow, purposeful. Barefoot in the dirt, Maybelle carried a small bundle wrapped in cloth. She knelt by the barn and dug into the ground with her hands, fast but careful. When the hole was deep enough, she buried the bundle and pressed the earth back down like she was tucking it into bed. Jonas didn't move. She returned to the house, her nightdress fluttering in the wind, eyes glancing once at the barn before she vanished inside. The next morning, he waited until she took the wagon down to the creek for water. Then he dug. The cloth bundle was wrapped in oilskin. Inside it, he found a locket, caked with dried blood and dirt, snapped shut, and a Colt .45, old but clean, wrapped in a red handkerchief with the initials DB stitched in the corner. He pocketed them both and said nothing. Maybelle returned, whistling an off-key tune, something almost like a lullaby. Her eyes flicked once, to the barn. He offered no greeting. She went back to work like nothing had happened. At supper, she talked for the first time in 3 days. "This land," she said, tearing bread in her fingers, "feels like it forgets everything." Jonas didn't look up. Maybe, or maybe it just don't care. She smiled, a slow, strange smile. "That's kinder than most men." He watched her eat. She had a hunger like someone always half-starved, even if her plate was full. Later that night, as Jonas oiled the rifle he hadn't used in months, he looked out the window. Maybelle sat on the porch, staring into the dark. No book, no light, just her and the stars. Something about her didn't add up. She wasn't who she said she was. He knew it like he knew the ache in his bones when weather turned. And still, he didn't send her away, didn't hand her over, because he didn't trust her, but he didn't trust the world she'd come from either. By the 5th day, she rode the fence line with him. She kept pace. She didn't chatter, but she was good with the reins, knew how to spot broken wire, even pointed out a bobcat's den before he saw it. "You ain't afraid of much," Jonas said, half to himself. Maybelle just tilted her head. "Only the things that smile too wide." That night, Jonas lay awake again. This time not from grief, but from curiosity, discomfort, something more primal. He opened the locket he'd found. Inside was a picture of a man he didn't recognize. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a cleft in his chin. And a woman beside him. Maybe a sister, maybe a wife. Maybe someone Maybelle had shot. He closed it and put it away. Out here, names meant less than actions. But secrets had weight, and Maybelle was carrying hers like a sack of dynamite. As the week turned, a shadow passed through the valley, one that had nothing to do with the weather, and Jonas had the creeping feeling the past wasn't done with either of them. At dawn, the ranch was quiet but watchful, the kind of hush that made even the wind seem cautious. Jonas Rourke stood alone in the barn, boots pressed into damp earth, staring at the small mound of soil where the girl, Maybelle or whatever her real name was, had buried something under cover of night. The Colt .45 and the bloodied locket lay now on his workbench, wrapped in oilskin as he'd found them. He hadn't asked her about them. Not yet. He wasn't sure what answer he wanted to hear, He didn't trust her, but something deeper than suspicion kept him silent. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe loneliness had twisted itself into a shape resembling loyalty. Or maybe, though he'd never admit it aloud, he saw something of himself in her. A broken thing that wouldn't shatter all the way. Maybelle moved about the ranch with mechanical purpose. She took to the chores like someone raised with dirt under their fingernails, branding cattle with a competent hand, hammering nails into the roof without complaint, even fixing a broken hinge on the chicken coop. She didn't ask for instruction. She didn't talk much either, but she paid attention. Jonas watched her from the porch as she moved between tasks, sleeves rolled up, a piece of twine keeping her bonnet tied back. Her hands were stronger than her voice. She never looked like she belonged in a saloon. That was the odd part. She carried herself like someone used to open sky and hard labor, not barroom captivity. No bruises, no frantic plea for help, just silence and control. Too much control. The storm came back that night. Not rain, news. A rider kicked up dust along the trail, his horse lathered in sweat, and by evening a stranger in a long tan coat dismounted at Jonas's gate. He was tall, sharp-featured, with silver in his beard and steel in his eyes. His badge glinted against his vest. "Jonas Rourke?" he asked. Jonas nodded, rifle slung at his side. "Marshal Dane Coltrane," the man said, dismounting slowly. "Mind if I ask you a few questions?" Jonas didn't move. "Go ahead." Coltrane's voice was even, not unkind, but there was weight behind his words. "I'm tracking someone, a woman, about 5'6", dark hair, early 20s, travels, under different names. Dangerous, might be armed, might be wounded." Jonas's eyes narrowed. "What did she do?" "Killed a man in Elkhorn Crossing. Left him in a barn with his own knife stuck under his ribs. Witnesses say it was cold-blooded. Took his horse, maybe gold too." Jonas didn't react. "You got a likeness?" The marshal pulled a crumpled sketch from his coat. It was rough, done in charcoal, but clear enough. The scar above the lip was unmistakable. Maybelle, or whatever her name really was. Jonas didn't. "Look long." He folded the paper and slipped it into his coat pocket. "Haven't seen anyone like that." The marshal gave him a long, evaluating stare. "You sure?" Jonas nodded once. Coltrane exhaled, nodding slowly. "All right, I'll be heading east at first light. If you see anything, or if someone comes through, send word to Fort Laramie." Jonas didn't say he would. The marshal rode off into the orange, dusk, a long shadow trailing behind him. Inside the house, Maybelle stood at the window, watching the marshal leave. She didn't ask who he was. She didn't have to. That night, Jonas lit the fireplace and unwrapped the Colt again. The initials DB stitched into the red handkerchief echoed through his mind. He flipped open the locket, stared again at the two faces within. He felt no closer to answers, just more certain that the questions were going to catch fire if left unasked. He didn't hear her footsteps, but he felt her presence behind him. When he turned, she was standing in the doorway, arms crossed. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes locked onto the gun in his hand. "You found it," she said. Jonas nodded. She stepped into the light. Her bonnet was gone, and her hair hung loose over her shoulders. The scar above her lip seemed darker, more jagged now that it wasn't hidden. She wasn't flinching anymore. "You planning to turn me in?" she asked. "That depends," Jonas replied. "On what?" "On whether you shot that man in cold blood." She tilted her head like she was weighing the question. Then she pulled out a chair and sat across from him, folding her hands like someone about to tell the truth, not because they owed it, but because they were tired of carrying it. "My name isn't Maybelle," she began. "It's Raissa Bellamy." Jonas said nothing, just watched. "I was part of a gang. Not by choice, I was sold to them when I was 15 by a man who called himself my stepfather. They used me as bait, distraction, cleaner. When I got older, they gave me a gun and told me to earn my place. So I did. Her voice didn't shake, but it wasn't flat either. It held something else. Bitterness, without apology. The man I killed in Elkhorn. His name was Deke Branson. He led the gang. Beat me. Tried to kill me when I said I was leaving. I stabbed him before he could shoot. Then I ran. Jonas tapped the butt of the Colt against the table. The gold? I took it. Hid it. Left most of it behind when I came. To Dead Elm. Figured it'd only bring trouble. Jonas looked at her. Why bury the gun? Raisa looked down. It's the only one I trusted, but I didn't want to keep it close. Not anymore. The wind howled outside. The fire crackled. You still running? He asked. Raisa's jaw tightened. Every day. You could have killed me. Could have run last night. I thought about it. They sat in silence, two ghosts waiting to see who would vanish first. Finally, Jonas stood, slowly. He placed the Colt and the locket on the table between them. I don't care about your past, he said, but if it brings fire to my land, I need to know. Raisa nodded. It's coming, Jonas. Sooner or later, they won't let me go. He stared at her. Then we'll be ready. The next morning, Raisa rose early. She saddled the horses, ran the fence line, and fixed the broken corral gate before Jonas had even finished coffee. The air between them had shifted, still guarded, but shared now, like two people living on the edge of the same cliff. Raisa laughed that afternoon. The sound startled Jonas. It was dry, clipped, but real. They were playing poker in the shade, using cattle chips for currency. She bluffed like a veteran and cleaned him out with a hand of near-nothings. When he groaned, she grinned. You're a terrible liar, she said. I wasn't trying to lie, he grumbled. Well, there's your problem. Jonas shook his head. You ever stop running, Raisa? Not yet. You planning to? She didn't answer right away. Then, with a glance toward the hills, if there's ever a place worth stopping for. That night, Jonas couldn't sleep again. He unwrapped the sketch from Marshall Coltrane. He stared at it long, the lines now too familiar. He folded it once, then again, then slipped it into the flames. As the paper curled and blackened, the door creaked open behind him. Raisa stood in the doorway, hair damp from washing, barefoot on the wooden floor. You burned it, she said. I don't like clutter, he replied. She looked at him for a long moment. They'll come looking, not just Coltrane, the others too. I know. You could still turn me in. I could. Why don't you? Jonas hesitated. Because I buried a lot out here too. Some things just don't stay in the ground. She stepped closer, then stopped herself. I won't bring trouble if I can help it, she said softly. Trouble's already coming, he replied. Question is whether we face it alone or not. The firelight flickered over her face. She nodded once, then turned and walked quietly back to her room. Jonas remained by the fire, staring into the embers, knowing full well that quiet like this never lasted long. The horizon burned copper as dawn broke, casting long shadows across the pasture. Jonas stood at the edge of the corral, watching Raisa as she saddled the second horse. Her movements were crisp, practiced, no wasted energy. She'd become a fixture on the ranch in the weeks since the firelight confessions, and though little had been said since, something unspoken had taken root between them. Trust, perhaps, or at least the beginnings of it. But change had a scent, and it carried. On the wind that morning, Jonas heard it first, a faint echo of hooves, fast and many. His fingers brushed the rifle leaning against the fence as he turned his head toward the north trail. Dust bloomed like smoke on the ridge. 4 riders, no more than shadows at that distance, thundered into view, silhouettes hardened by the rising sun. Raisa stiffened. She didn't have to look twice. They found me. Jonas nodded, jaw tight. How many? Hard to say from here, but that lead horse, it's Ward Tally. Jonas had heard the name. A cutthroat, former Pinkerton turned bounty hunter when the money got better and the morals got worse. Ruthless didn't begin to describe him. Raisa's eyes had gone steely. She turned toward the house and moved with a kind of fatalist calm. We've got half an hour, maybe less. Jonas followed her inside. The house, normally a place of quiet routines and whispered memories, now pulsed with urgency. Raisa dropped to her knees beside the hearth, pried loose the stone Jonas had noticed weeks ago, but never questioned, and pulled out the Colt. She checked the chamber, still loaded. Jonas opened a cabinet behind the kitchen table and removed a scattergun, then unlocked the drawer in the sideboard for extra shells. He glanced at Raisa. We can try to talk to them, he offered, though even he knew it was a lie. They didn't ride this far for a conversation, she said flatly. The thunder of hooves grew louder. Jonas took position behind the front door, raising the rifle to his shoulder. Raisa crouched at the window with the Colt balanced on the sill. For a long moment, time stretched thin. The riders stopped 20 yards from the gate. Dust settled around them like a shroud. Ward Tally sat, straight in the saddle, broad shoulders framed in a dark duster. His face was weather-worn and cruel with a mustache like barbed wire. He raised a hand in mock civility. "Rourke," he called. "We just want the girl. No need for blood today." Jonas didn't reply. Tally laughed. "You really gonna protect a murderer? Don't seem like your kind of cause." "She's under my roof," Jonas answered. "That's cause enough. You know what she did? She told me. You want her? Come earn it." A pause. Then Tally's smile faded. "So be it." The first shot cracked through the morning, slamming into the porch post. Jonas ducked and returned fire, hitting the fence rail inches from one. Ryder's leg. Raisa fired twice in quick succession, dropping to her belly to avoid the splintered window frame as bullets raked the wall behind her. Chaos descended like a dust storm. Jonas rolled out the door and took cover behind the water trough, firing at the nearest horseman. He hit flesh, horse or man, he wasn't sure, but the rider screamed and fell. Raisa darted to the doorway, gun in both hands, eyes sharp as broken glass. They moved like a unit now, unspoken rhythms guiding their fire. Raisa took the high shots, Jonas the close ones. Another rider peeled off, hit in the shoulder. That left. Tally and the man to his left, a younger brute with a scar across his neck. Tally barked an order, and his companion charged. Jonas let him come, stepping out just enough to take a clean shot. The bullet found its mark. The man crumpled mid-saddle and collapsed into the dust. Tally didn't flinch. Instead, he dismounted, slowly, like he had all the time in the world. He drew his revolver, polished silver, and started walking. Raisa stepped onto the porch. Her expression wasn't rage. It wasn't fear either. It was something colder, resolve. Tally stopped 10 feet from her. "You gonna shoot me, girl?" She raised the Colt. "If I don't, you'll kill him next. I'm here for you, not the rancher. Ain't personal. It always is with you, Ward." He smirked. "You were good at what you did. Should have stayed in the gang. You made sure I never forgot what I was worth." Tally moved fast, faster than his size should allow. He lunged sideways, aiming low. Raisa fired. The shot tore into his thigh, but he didn't drop. Jonas emerged from the side, his rifle raised. Tally turned toward him, gun raised, too late. The blast from Jonas's shotgun knocked him back several feet. Tally hit the ground hard, dust puffing up around him. His gun skittered from his hand. He wheezed, clutching at his chest, then went still. Silence returned, thick and terrible. Jonas lowered the shotgun. His breathing was shallow, but steady. Raisa, eyes still on Tally's body, slowly uncocked the Colt. The barn door creaked open, behind them. One of the wounded riders, the one Raisa had clipped earlier, staggered into view. He held a pistol, but his arm shook too hard to aim. Raisa raised the Colt again. Jonas stepped in front of her. No, the man froze. What are you? Go, Jonas said. Tell the others what happened here. The rider blinked, then limped away without another word. He didn't look back. Later, they buried Tally near the tree line. Raisa said nothing the entire time. She stood still, hands clenched, face unreadable. Back inside, Jonas poured water into a basin, handed her a cloth for the blood on her arm. She took it, wiped herself down mechanically. He won't be the last, she said. Jonas nodded. I know. She stared into the flame of the oil lamp. You didn't have to get involved. I know. Why did you? Jonas hesitated. Because I saw you standing alone. I know what that looks like. She didn't respond right away. Then, voice low, I don't know what to do now. I've never made plans beyond running. You could stay, Jonas offered. For a while anyway, she met his gaze. You think that's safe? Not sure safe matters much anymore, but you'll be less alone. She looked away, then nodded once. All right. For the first time since she arrived, Raisa unpacked her things properly. She laid the Colt in a drawer instead of under a pillow. She even set a small photo on the windowsill. Her mother, perhaps, though she didn't say. They didn't speak of Tally again that week. Instead, they built, fixed fence lines, rode out to check the well, shared coffee in the mornings and silence in the evenings. Something subtle had shifted. Not peace exactly, but an understanding. A contract written not in ink, but in survival and fire. Jonas began teaching her how to read ledgers, how to count cattle proper. She corrected his spelling with dry humor. They worked in tandem, like two halves of a machine neither had known. They needed. The past still hung over them, but for now it was a shadow, not a shackle. And far on the edge of the property, where the tall grass whispered secrets to the wind, a new trail began, one not yet marked on any map. The season turned. Summer faded into the brittle gold of fall, and with it came a deceptive calm, the kind that settled over the prairie like a warm quilt, but hummed beneath with tension, like a wire drawn tight. Raisa stayed. She worked the land, rose with the sun, and slept lighter than any soul Jonas had known. Yet something about her changed. Her movements became slower, more deliberate, as if she were learning to live rather than merely survive. She smiled more, not often, and never wide, but enough to mark the difference. Enough that Jonas began to believe they might outrun the past. But even then, a voice in him, dull and persistent as an old injury, warned otherwise. It returned first as silence. The post rider didn't come. The trading wagon skipped its bi-weekly stop. Jonas's dog, Bix, refused to cross the southern boundary of the property, and the birds, those damn birds, vanished from the morning sky. 3 days later, they found the first sign. A man nailed to a tree like some cruel warning. He was stripped of his gear, throat cut clean, a playing card pinned to his chest, the Queen of Spades. Raisa didn't flinch when she saw it. She just stared, long and quiet, before she turned and began checking her rifle. They sent her, she said. Jonas didn't ask who. He didn't need to. Her name's Evelyn Price. They call her the Widow. She runs what's left of Branson's gang, the ones that didn't die or scatter after I killed him. Raisa's voice held no fear, just cold awareness, the kind that only came from someone who'd survived her once. She's worse than Branson, smarter, quieter. She doesn't charge. At you. She waits, watches. Jonas stared out at the land. The silence was too complete, like the world was holding its breath. How many? Could be 5, could be 20. But if Evelyn's leading them, they'll come at night. They boarded the windows, reinforced the barn doors. Jonas dug up the old Winchester from under the floorboards, while Raisa set tripwires. along the fence. No words were wasted. There wasn't time for sentiment or fear. They worked like people who understood exactly what kind of death was riding toward them. On the second night they came. It began with fire. The barn went up first, sudden and savage, flames clawing into the dark sky like hell itself had broken, loose. The cattle screamed. Jonas grabbed the scattergun, handed Raisa the repeater, and they bolted outside as bullets tore through the air. Shadows moved beyond the flames, silent figures, masked and armed. Jonas dropped one with a shot through the chest, another with a blast that scattered across the dirt. Raisa hit two more from the porch, eyes steeled, heart unmoved. The trap sang, gunpowder snaps and shrieks as men went down to buried charges and wire snares. But Evelyn didn't charge. She waited, just like Raisa said. The front door exploded inward. Jonas was thrown back, wind knocked out of him. A figure stepped through the smoke, a woman in a long black coat, hair pinned beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Her face was pale in the firelight, but her eyes gleamed like sharpened obsidian. "Raisa Bellamy," Evelyn drawled. "You've been a difficult girl to find." Raisa didn't answer. She was already moving, cutting through the back hall, flanking wide. Jonas tried to rise, his ribs screaming, but Evelyn kicked the gun from his hand before he reached it. "You must be the rancher," she said, almost kindly. "You gave her shelter. That was generous, but stupid." He reached for the boot knife. She stepped on his wrist. "Don't," she said. A shot rang out. Evelyn staggered. Raisa stood in the hallway, rifle raised. The bullet had caught Evelyn in the shoulder, but the woman didn't fall. She turned, her face twisted into something feral. "I taught you better than that," Evelyn hissed. "You taught me to survive," Raisa replied. "Not to serve." They moved at the same time. Evelyn ducked as Raisa fired again, the shot missing, by inches. She closed the distance like a wolf, knife drawn, slashing. Raisa blocked the first strike with her forearm, twisting to deliver a blow with the butt of her rifle. Evelyn grunted, reeled back, then lunged again. Jonas struggled to his feet, blood in his mouth, vision tunneling. He grabbed the fallen shotgun and turned, just in time to see Evelyn pin Raisa to the floor, blade pressing into her throat. Last words! Evelyn spat. Raisa smiled, teeth bloodied. "You forgot the rancher." The blast from the shotgun lifted Evelyn off her feet. She hit the wall with a sickening crunch and crumpled, unmoving. Silence crashed over the room. Jonas dropped the gun and stumbled to Raisa's side. She was breathing, barely scratched. He helped her sit up. Her eyes flicked to Evelyn's body, then closed. "It's over," Jonas said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. Raisa leaned against him, exhausted. No, but she was the last who mattered. They didn't bury Evelyn. They left her outside, the gate with the card still in her coat pocket. A warning for anyone else who might come. The barn was gone. 2 of the cattle dead. The fence ruined. But the house still stood. Raisa sat on the porch the next morning, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the scorched fields. Jonas brought her coffee, hand scraped raw and eyes sunken. He sat beside her without a word. "I used to believe death was a door," she said softly. "You step through, or you push someone else through. I never thought about what came after." Jonas sipped the coffee. "And now, I think it's just another trail. You pick the one you can walk without turning back." He nodded. "You planning to leave?" She looked at him, not answering for a long time. Then finally, "No, not today." The wind stirred. The birds had returned. Far off in the distance, the sky began to break open, light pushing through. "The smoke." Jonas smiled, faint but real. "Then we rebuild." Together, they rose, and for the first time in either of their lives, the world didn't feel like it was chasing them. It felt like it was waiting.